choose you because they loved you. They chose you because they saw your light and wanted to dim it. That's the brutal truth. You were never a random target. You were placed deliberately, not by them, not by fate, but by God. You wonder why? Why would a loving God send someone so full of light, someone like you, into the life of someone so full of light, so manipulative, so calculated? Why would he let your heart be shattered, your spirit tested, your soul almost destroyed? Because God never wastes pain, and he certainly never places warriors where there is no war to fight. You were not placed in the narcissist's life to be broken. You were placed there to wake them up or walk away as a symbol of the consequence of never changing. Whether they transformed or not was never your responsibility, but the seed you were meant to plant, that was. You were chosen, not cursed. That truth changes everything. Because for so long, it felt like a punishment, didn't it? Being placed in a relationship with someone who drained you, twisted your words, distorted your reality, and made you question your own worth. It felt like a cruel joke. It felt like betrayal from life, from fate, and at times even from God. You asked why, you begged for answers, you wanted to know what you had done to deserve that kind of chaos and cruelty. But the truth was never about punishment, it was about purpose, it was about divine placement. God didn't put you there to crush you. He placed you there because he knew what he put inside you. He knew your heart, he knew your depth, he knew your strength, even when you didn't. He knew the kind of light you carried. The kind that couldn't be tested, copied, or manufactured. He knew it wouldn't die. You weren't cursed. You were called. You were assigned. Sent into a battlefield not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to survive it and strong enough to rise from it. The narcissists didn't find you by accident. They were drawn to the very thing God placed inside you. Your spirit, your authenticity, your power. Narcissists are hunters of light. They don't feed off toxic people like themselves. They feed off the ones who radiate goodness. Your compassion, your patience, your loyalty, those weren't flaws. They were divine traits the narcissist couldn't understand or respect, but desperately needed access to. And so they latched onto you, pretending to love you, only to try and dismantle everything they admired. Not because you were lacking, but because you reminded them of everything they lacked. You were never the broken one. You were the light in a broken environment. And that's why it hurt. That's why it burned so deep. Because light doesn't sit in darkness without feeling the weight of its contrast. But that pain wasn't proof that you were cursed. It was proof that you were needed. God placed you there for impact, for awakening, maybe to awaken the narcissists, maybe to awaken others, but mostly to awaken you, to show you who you really are when everything false falls away. It takes a divine kind of love to endure what you endured and still have something left to give. Still have a heart that beats with compassion. Still have eyes that see beyond pain. Still have the strength to rise up and speak your truth. That is not the result of being cursed. That is the evidence of being chosen. Chosen to survive what should have destroyed you. Chosen to grow where others withered. Chosen to lead others out of the same hell you once thought you'd never escape. So don't look at your past with shame. Look at it with reverence. You didn't just make it through. You emerged, not as a victim, but as someone wiser, deeper, more connected to purpose. You were never just another person in the narcissist story. You were the turning point in your own. God used the pain to purify the path, to make sure that when you walked out, you'd never walk back into anything that didn't value your soul. You were chosen for something greater than survival. You were chosen to carry the truth, to shine the light, to speak the words others are too afraid to say. That is not a curse. That is an anointing, a calling. And the proof that even in your most broken moments, heaven was still writing a victory story in your name. Your sensitivity is your power. That's a truth many people overlook, especially after experiencing narcissistic abuse. You were likely made to feel like your emotions were a problem. Your empathy, your ability to feel deeply, to notice small changes in someone's mood, to sense energy in the room. Those were all used against you. The narcissist called you too emotional, too reactive, too soft. They mocked your tears, dismissed your hurt, and twisted your compassion into something shameful. They mocked your tears, dismissed your hurt, and twisted your compassion into something shameful. But here's what they didn't want you to realize. What they feared more than anything, that your sensitivity wasn't a flaw. It was your superpower. It's that same sensitivity that made you aware of their red flags long before your mind could explain them. You felt something was off even when their words were convincing. You couldn't shake the discomfort. Even when they were love bombing you, you noticed inconsistencies, shifts in tone, energy that didn't match the words. That was discernment. And that gift is born from sensitivity. The very thing they tried to kill in you was the exact thing that could see through them. But you doubted yourself because they trained you to. They conditioned you to ignore your gut, your heart, your own emotional intelligence. Every time you expressed hurt, they minimized it. Every time you set a boundary, they punished you. You were slowly made to believe that your emotions were the problem instead of seeing that your emotions were the signal. Your sensitivity wasn't overreaction, it was divine protection. You were never too sensitive. You were surrounded by people who were too disconnected from their own humanity to appreciate yours. And when God gives someone a sensitive spirit, it's because that person is meant to feel what others numb, to see what others ignore, to hear what others silence. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The narcissist saw this power in you and feared it. That's why they had to confuse you. That's why they tried to make you doubt what you felt. Because the moment you trusted that sensitivity, they would lose control. You'd start seeing the patterns. You'd start questioning their narratives. You'd stop absorbing the blame and start standing in your truth. And that would be the beginning of their end. Your sensitivity connected you to people deeply. It allowed you to love with purity, to give without expecting, to see brokenness in others and still want to help. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is sacred. But the journey was never about changing that part of you. It was about guarding it, about learning how to protect it from those who would exploit it. God didn't want you to become cold. He wanted you to become wise, to walk into the next season of your life with your heart open, but your eyes wide. And now you do. You've been refined by fire. You've walked through the manipulation and still kept your soul intact. You've cried, screamed, broken, but through it all, your spirit didn't die. That's power. That's strength. That's sensitivity. Transformed. Let them call it too much. Let them say you're emotional. Let them label you what they will, because now you know what they mocked in you was the very thing that made you dangerous to their lies. Your sensitivity isn't a curse, It's a compass. It guides you, protects you, reveals truth. And when you trust it, you align with the voice of God. So don't dim it. Don't suppress it. Don't apologize for it. No, we all have a voice, the voice of God. So don't dim it. Don't suppress it. Don't apologize for it. Because if you are, they shall not be. They shall not press it. Don't apologize for it. Don't call it sexy. But if they don't protect you, let it lead you. Let it awaken others. Let it be the fire that burns away illusions. You are not too sensitive. You are perfectly equipped for the purpose God placed inside you. So if you're sitting here and what are you looking at? That means that God wants you to be hurt. Let them hurt you. Let them crush you. They don't need your help. They don't need your company. Let them come. Give, give, give. Let them kill. Let them steal. You were the mirror they feared. That's why they hated you, yet couldn't let you go. That's why they needed your presence, but simultaneously tried to destroy every piece of you. It wasn't because you were weak. It was because you reflected back everything they were trying to avoid seeing in themselves. You didn't just walk into their life as a partner, friend, or family member. You entered as truth wrapped in human form. You became the reflection of everything they were not, everything they pretended to be, and everything they deeply feared they could never become. And that's why they couldn't stand to truly look at you. The narcissist lives behind a carefully constructed mask. Their whole world is built on illusion, on grandiosity, control, and lies they tell themselves about who they are. They survive by manipulating how others perceive them, by shaping narratives, twisting truths, and using people as tools to maintain their false identity. But when someone like you walks in, authentic, emotionally aware, spiritually awake, you become dangerous because you don't feed their delusion, you disrupt it. Just by existing as you are, you showed love in a real way, not as performance, not as manipulation, but as connection. You brought honesty into a space ruled by denial. You brought softness into a heart that only knew defense. You brought forgiveness they didn't deserve and kindness they couldn't comprehend. And with every gesture, every tear, every silent prayer you made for them, they were confronted with something terrifying. The reality of who they truly are. And the contrast between you and them became a threat. So they turned on you. They insulted your character, minimized your emotions, and made you feel like you were the problem. Because if they could convince you that you were broken, then they wouldn't have to face their own brokenness. If they could shatter the mirror, they wouldn't have to see the damage in their reflection. That's why they had to destroy you emotionally. Because loving you while staying the same wasn't an option. Something had to change, and since they weren't willing to change, they decided it would be you. But here's the truth. You didn't show them anything bad. You showed them what healing could look like. You showed them what grace and truth could feel like. You showed them the path toward redemption, and they ran from it. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were too much of the truth, and truth terrifies those who live in lies. You weren't placed there to save them. That was never your job. You were there as a revelation, a chance, an invitation to become more. And when they refused it, God removed you. Because once the mirror is rejected, the only thing left is distance. Not to punish you, but to protect you. The most painful part of being the mirror is that the one you were sent to help is the same one who tries hardest to break you. But don't let that destroy you. Let it define you. You were never weak. You were never lost. You were never too emotional or too dramatic. You were clear. You were honest. You were real. And your realness was too heavy for their delusion. So now you carry that mirror with honor. You hold it not to reflect the brokenness of others anymore, but to reflect the truth of who you are. You've looked into the depths of manipulation and didn't become what you saw. You stayed kind, you stayed grounded, you stayed you, and now you're free. The narcissist feared the mirror, but God used it to show you your strength. And in the end, that reflection was never just about them. It was about you finally seeing yourself clearly and never forgetting it again. You weren't just meant to survive. You were meant to testify. That's the shift that changes everything. Because surviving a narcissist is not just about crawling out of the pain and piecing your life back together. It's about what comes next. It's about what you do with the wisdom, the experience, the battle scars. It's about the voice that comes alive in you after you've been silenced for so long. God didn't allow you to go through all of that just to say, I made it. He allowed you to go through it so you could rise and say, here's what I learned, and here's how I'm going to help someone else get out too. Testimony doesn't come from comfort. It comes from fire. It comes from walking through things you never thought you'd survive, from crying tears no one saw, praying prayers that felt like they hit the ceiling, and still choosing not to give up. Testimony comes from being shattered and rebuilt. Not by the world, not by the narcissist, but by God himself. When you speak now, you don't speak from theory. You speak from truth. You speak from lived experience. And that kind of truth is unshakable. That kind of truth sets people free. There are people right now who are where you once were, sitting in silence, questioning their sanity, blaming themselves for the abuse, holding on to false hope, smiling in public but dying inside. You know what that feels like. And because you've walked through it, you now carry the torch. You carry the light. Your story becomes the evidence that healing is possible, that freedom is real, that you can be shattered by someone who pretended to love you and still rebuild a life more beautiful than anything you had with them. You were never meant to go through that pain in vain. God doesn't waste suffering. He multiplies the purpose of it. He turns what the enemy meant to destroy you into a platform to build others. You don't have to preach to change lives. Just by speaking the truth of what you went through, just by standing in your story without shame, and then building those up, you're already setting others free. Because so many people are still trapped in secrecy, still wondering if anyone would believe them, still scared to speak. But then they hear you, and something shifts, something awakens, and they begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, they're not alone. That is the power of your testimony. It doesn't just heal others, it heals you. Every time you speak the truth, you reclaim a part of your voice. Every time you say, this happened to me, and it was real, you cancel out the lies they fed you. Every time you help someone else rise, a deeper part of you rises too. Because now you're not just surviving, you're walking in purpose. The enemy tried to silence you for a reason, because your story is dangerous to darkness. It dismantles manipulation. It confronts abuse. It breaks cycles. It teaches others to listen to their gut, to set boundaries, to stop tolerating toxic behavior masked as love. You're not just healing. You're becoming a guide, a lighthouse, a warrior. And that is a holy calling. So speak, share, write, teach, help. Whether it's one person or thousands, your story was never just for you. It was always meant to be a light. Don't hide what you went through. Own it. Let God use it. Because when you testify, you don't just speak. You awaken the very power that once tried to be buried in silence. You weren't just meant to survive. You were meant to rise and then reach back and pull others out. God removed you when your purpose was complete. That moment of release, the breakup, the discard, the sudden ending may have felt like abandonment, but it was divine intervention. You may have cried, begged, and even prayed for restoration, not realizing that your assignment there was already done. What you called heartbreak, God called closure. You stayed longer than you should have because of your heart, your hope, your belief in the good. But God in his mercy allowed the situation to collapse so you could finally walk into the freedom he always had waiting for you. The removal wasn't punishment. It was protection. You weren't supposed to stay stuck in a place where your soul was starving. You weren't meant to live in confusion, constantly trying to prove your worth to someone who only saw your love as a tool to be used. You gave chances, you tried to fix it, you prayed for change, but nothing ever seemed to get better. And that's because it wasn't supposed to. Your growth was never going to come from fixing them. Your growth came from realizing you couldn't. The moment you realized your love could not heal a broken character, God opened a way out, quietly, powerfully, finally. You didn't leave too soon. You didn't give up. You fulfilled your assignment. You planted the seed. Whether or not it ever grows in their life is not your burden. You brought truth, love, grace, and healing into an atmosphere that had been ruled by ego, control, and lies. You disrupted darkness. And when that light wasn't welcome, God pulled you out before it could destroy you. Not because he gave up on you, but because he chose to rescue you. So many people mourn the loss of the narcissist without realizing it was never love they lost. It was the illusion of it. You didn't lose something sacred. You lost the attachment to something toxic. And in that release, you didn't just get your life back. You got yourself back. Your mind, your voice, your laughter, your clarity, your peace. Things you hadn't felt in so long you almost forgot what they looked like. That wasn't just a breakup. That was a deliverance. And maybe it didn't feel clean or peaceful. Maybe it came with drama, trauma, blame, and confusion. That's okay. God doesn't always remove you from a place with ease. Sometimes he has to let it break so you stop trying to rebuild it. Sometimes it has to get ugly, final, even cruel, so you never look back and try to return to something that was never meant to hold you forever. What felt like rejection was actually redirection. You're not meant to heal so you can go back to what hurt you. You're meant to heal so you can move forward into something new, something whole, something that mirrors the love you gave so freely. God removed you because the environment was no longer aligned with your growth. You had learned the lessons. You had seen the truth. And now, keeping you there would only delay your destiny. So let go of the guilt. Release the shame. Stop wondering if you could have done more. You did more than enough. And now God is calling you into a season where peace replaces chaos. Truth replaces confusion. And love doesn't come with strings. Trust the removal. Honor the exit. It didn't happen to you. It happened for you. Because when your purpose in someone's life is complete, God doesn't hesitate to close the door, not out of cruelty, but out of love. He saw what you couldn't. He knew what they were saying behind your back. He knew what they'd never change. And instead of letting you sink with them, he parted the waters and told you to walk. You didn't lose anything. You were set free. You are now the light that breaks cycles. That light didn't come easily. It was carved out of darkness, sharpened by betrayal, and set ablaze by the fire you were thrown into. But now it shines. Now it carries weight. It carries truth. It is the shining of a good light with a bad physical shade. Purity, correctitude. You are pure. You are pure. And that truth carries the power to destroy generations of silent suffering, hidden wounds, and repeated patterns. You are not just someone who survived narcissistic abuse. You are someone who has the power to end the legacy of it. For yourself, for your children, for anyone who comes into contact with your healed presence. That is not just recovery. That is transformation. The pain you endured wasn't isolated. It was part of something much older. Maybe you watched a parent tolerate the same kind of manipulation. Maybe you were conditioned from childhood to accept emotional neglect as normal. Maybe no one ever taught you that love shouldn't hurt, that love shouldn't make you question your worth, that love shouldn't drain your soul. So when the narcissist came, they didn't feel foreign. They felt familiar. And that's why breaking free was so hard, because you weren't just leaving a person, you were leaving behind years, even generations of programming that taught you to settle for less than what God intended for you. But here you are, awake, aware, lit from within. That awakening didn't come from reading a book or hearing a sermon. It came from walking through hell with your eyes wide open. From realizing that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. From understanding that loyalty without boundaries is self-destruction. You've learned. You've cried. You've grown. And now you've become something sacred. A cycle breaker. The power of a cycle breaker isn't just in what they say. It's in what they refuse to repeat. You refuse to pass down the trauma. You refuse to teach your children that abuse is love. You refuse to normalize silence, secrets, and survival mode living. Instead, you become the one who teaches truth. You show what healing looks like. You set boundaries. You speak when it's hard. You apologize when needed. You stop pretending everything is okay when it's not. You break the silence so the next generation doesn't have to live in the confusion you did. This is your legacy now. Not pain, not fear, not codependency, but clarity, strength, freedom. And it started the moment you said no more. That one choice, that one decision to walk away, to heal, to rebuild, it changed the entire direction of your story. and that ripple will echo far beyond you. Do not underestimate how powerful that makes you. The narcissist wanted you to believe you were small, powerless, voiceless, but they were wrong, because now your voice is louder than ever. And it doesn't come from rage. It comes from revelation, from the knowledge that you were never the problem. You were the pattern breaker, the one who stepped into the storm and didn't come out bitter, but better. The one who could have shut down, but chose to stand tall. The one who could have repeated the pain, but decided to become the healing. That is your calling now. Not to save the narcissist, not to fix the past, but to shine so brightly that others can see the path out of the darkness too. Your light doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you available to truth, available to love, real love, available to become everything you were always meant to be before the world tried to silence you. You are not just healed, you are healing. You are not just free, you are freedom. And that light you carry now, it's the kind that exposes lies, protects peace, and refuses to settle for anything less than sacred. That light breaks cycles. And you are the one God chose to carry it.